Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Neal, and I'm the city manager in Edina, and I'm happy that you're here to join us for today's Town Talks. This year, we've planned a series of Town Talks around important topics in our city, a lot around our budget plan and our budget work plan. Before I get started with today's Town Talk, I want to introduce a few of the elected officials that are here today. Mayor Jim Hovland is here. Council members Kevin Staunton and Ron Anderson, State Senator Melissa Franzen, State Representative Heather Edelson. I think I've got everybody. Great. Today's presentation is about public safety and crime in Edina. Police Chief Todd Milburn is going to talk about our current crime trends and his department's response and some new initiatives in crime prevention. Chief Milburn is going to speak for about 30 minutes. He'll have a presentation that focuses on our monitors. We will end today's Town Talk when there are no more questions, or at about 1 o'clock, whichever is first. However, we will hold another session this evening at 7 o'clock, and you can also continue to ask questions and make comments online at bettertogether.org for the next week. The online conversation opens tomorrow and closes on Tuesday, December 28th. Now I would like to formally introduce Chief Milburn. Todd has been on our city staff since August, so he's relatively new in Edina. He came to us after nearly a 30-year career in law enforcement in the city of Brooklyn Park, where he most recently served as the department's deputy chief. He worked his way up from the position of community services officer beginning in 1992. Todd holds a bachelor's degree in organizational management and leadership from Concordia University in St. Paul. Please join me in welcoming Chief Todd Milburn. Todd.
Test. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Todd Milburn, your new chief here. I've been here for about 4 months, and like Scott said, relatively new, so this is another opportunity for me to introduce myself to all of you. So thank you for coming. We're appreciative that everyone showed up. We know people are tuning in online as well, so thank you for that. Today, what we hope to accomplish is I'm going to give all of you some information, some updates, and some things that we've been working on here since we've seen some upticks here in crime. And of course, we had a very high-profile event here as well, and we'll update on that. And then we're hoping on the back end to answer some questions that all of you might have here as well. So we're going to go through some slides. We'll talk about some things here, and then we'll, on the back end, do a Q&A here as well. Does that sound good? Great. Thank you. Okay. Bear with me one sec. Just a little bit more background about me. So Todd Milburn is my name. Been here again all about 4 months, but I came from Brooklyn Park, where I spent about 29 years there doing a variety of different roles, held the different capacities in that organization. I'm a St. Paul native, so I grew up over in St. Paul, over by the Como Park area, Como Lake area, before I moved over to Brooklyn Park, where I set up my career path. I started, like I said, in 1992, and I held a variety of different positions. So I was fortunate to serve as a police officer, detectives. I worked on SWAT. I worked undercover. I didn't do a very good job of that because I couldn't grow a very good beard. And so then I moved on and did some other things. And so I was very blessed and fortunate to have a number of different opportunities in that organization. And I did start as a CSO, which is a non-sworn position, when I came out of high school. So a little bit about just some background information about Edina here is what we're going to go through in the police department, but this is a real brief synopsis of the outline here for the next 20 minutes of what we're going to talk about here. We'll talk about our organization. We get a lot of questions about how many officers we have on staff, so we're going to talk through that a little bit, some of the current crime trends and patterns that we've seen here locally in the last 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to talk about a response. What have we done on the police side to offset some of the things that we're seeing here? And we're going to talk about some of these events. We've launched some new initiatives in response to the things that we've seen here, lock around the clock and our Safe Cam program, which we're going to talk about again on the back end and hand out some material to all of you before you leave. And then we're going to talk about some crime prevention tips. And this is a big thing for us because what we've often said is that we can't do it alone. We have to work with our community members, and offer up crime prevention tips, but more importantly, work collaboratively on how to deal with current upticks in crime and things that we think that all of you can help us out with here moving forward as well. And again, we'll do a Q&A on the back end. So briefly, the police department is set up into 3 different divisions. We have investigations, patrol, and our admin. Our administrative group works the front counter, does a lot of paper processing, a lot of internal movement and systems processes. We also have a fully functioning jail, so we also can book people here. On our patrol side, we have officers that obviously respond to the 911 calls, and then on the investigative side, we provide a number of different services that way through high-profile investigations, low-level investigations, undercover work, you name it, our investigative team can do that function or those functions. Right now we have 55 sworn officers, 54 here soon. We have a person that's leaving for another department here. And our sworn authorized strength is 57. And so we're going through a recruitment effort here very soon. We're going to start that up in about 2 weeks and put a big push out there to try and hire up new officers coming up soon here, hopefully as soon as spring. Our support staff, that's a quick breakdown of how we break out. We have also our own dispatch center here, so we staff that with 10 dispatchers here. That's also in this building. And our record staff and our community service officers, and you can see the roll down from there. Important in all this is our crime analysts, and so we do a lot of data gathering, a lot of information sharing, and a lot of information-driven kind of police tactics based off the data that we develop out here internally, so we have a support staff for that work as well. This is just an overall call data that goes back the last 5 years. If you look back in 2017, you see that it was higher and it's gradually gone down. And these are just all calls for service, so this just gives you a representation of everything that we've done year by year going back the last 5 years. And as you can see, things have been trending down. There's lots of reasons for that. A lot of things that are going on. If you think back on COVID, responses, a lot of things changed for law enforcement. Traffic enforcement went down. A big byproduct of that, a result of that was COVID again, going back to that. So you saw a lot of that kind of work go down. But the good news too is that calls for service overall went down, and that's a good thing. And that's not just unique to this community. We saw this in many communities across Hennepin County. But also important for us, what goes up and some of the what might be looked at as lower level stuff. When you talk about property crimes, theft from auto, burglaries, vehicle thefts, those have crept up for us. So overall crime has gone down, but certain key crimes have gone up. Nonviolent crimes, important for this community as well. That stayed and remained relatively the same. So that's not gone up or gone down, but that's relatively the same. That's not true for all communities in Hennepin County. We've seen increases in other communities on the violent crime front, not necessarily on the property crime front. So there's differences within communities. Crime reporting, we get a lot of questions about how do we report out on our crime. So currently we have a crime map that is available to anyone that wants to go to the website. It's called cityprotect.com, and you can just look that up. And there you'll get a daily dump of our crime stats and information that comes out. And that comes direct from our records management system. So when a report is taken, it pushes through our system, it goes out to the website, and it's there available for your use and your access if you need to. We also provide weekly crime reports. We publish that to edinamn.gov/police, and so that provides you with a weekly snapshot of crime stats and information that might be pertinent for you. We also send information to our local media. They also ask for information about crime stats and information that way, so we push that and populate it out through our local media channels as well. Social media, as everyone knows, is very important, and so we update our high profiles through that. Facebook, Twitter, all those social media channels will push information out, particularly on those high profile cases to get the word out. We'll also ask for requests from assistance to residents or anybody that can help us out on cases as well. So current crime trends. What's been going on in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and what's really driven lots of the communication, lots of the questions, and lots of the work here that we've been doing here. So for us in Edina, going back to November 12th, for example, we started to see an uptick in vehicle thefts, burglaries, and of course the main high-profile event, the carjacking. But if we go back to the beginning of November 12th, what we started to see was an increase in burglaries and car thefts. And we were seeing suspects entering town in already stolen vehicles, dropping those off, and then looking for easy crimes of opportunity. And when I say that, I'm referring to people that were leaving fobs or keys in their cars and in garages, and then they were stealing those cars, and that's where we started to see this uptick in crime. One of the issues that we saw with that when you talk about burglaries, and a few of these burglaries are coded that way because cars were inside garages. And so if somebody takes a car from a garage, that's considered a burglary. And so that's where you start to see that increase in that crime category as well. So as we started to see this uptick in burglaries and auto thefts, we also saw days of the week and patterns emerging. Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays in the early afternoon and early evening hours were typically the times of day, days of the week that we're seeing these incidents happen. So that was our pattern for the last couple weeks. So what do we do in response to that? So as you look at the map on the right-hand side, if you look on the screens, you'll see a couple areas that are kind of boxed out or red lines are drawn around those areas. On the left side, that was where we first started to see our two crimes of auto theft and a burglary, and that's what started to cause us a little bit of concern at that point in time. And so when we started to see that, we started organizing information, and then if you look in the upper right, we started to see similar burglaries occurring up in the 50th and France and Country Club neighborhood just to the north as well. And so when we saw that, we started to adapt and we started to put resources out in the neighborhood, and I'll talk about that here in a second. Our response. So we started to deploy resources, but we also provided a lot of information. We started to issue press releases. We started to get out on the website. We started to leverage social media. We sent out email and text blasts, and we redirected our patrol response. And so what we call as directed patrols, and so that basically means just we're assigning patrol officers to dedicated areas. We increased the number of officers in these residential areas. We brought in officers on overtime. I would average about 4 to 8 additional officers were brought in to address these crime concerns in the immediate neighborhoods and provide that extra patrol. We also shut down our traffic unit. As you know, in Edina, we've always had a robust traffic presence, officer presence, and so we diverted those resources into the neighborhoods as well. That overtime just gives you a snapshot of how many hours of overtime we've dedicated to this work, which is over 200 hours. We also brought in reserve officers. So those are our volunteers, non-sworn officers that just can help us be the eyes and ears in these neighborhoods. If you've been over at 50th and France, you might have seen the trailer, what we call our mobile pro trailer. It's basically an extra eyes and ears for us, but it also records information as video cameras. There's a lot of technology on that, so that captures good information for us if we should need it. But it also provides a nice deterrent and presence in the neighborhood as well, so you've probably seen that out there, and that still remains the case. We've also done a lot of proactive traffic stops, particularly in the 50th and France area. So as we think about these two neighborhoods with the proactive presence or the presence in these neighborhoods, we're also looking for people that are acting suspiciously and conducting proactive traffic stops as well. Also key to this is our collaboration work in the last couple of weeks with CISA, intelligence units, and patrol resources. And that's just a really quick way to sum up that we work together with our partners in nearby cities and also with the county. And we've set up a weekly robust communication channel of intelligence shared information. We also have our officers in place to deploy if we have an issue here in Edina or other nearby cities as well. And so that's something that was quickly developed out and still remains the case moving forward. The big high-profile event, attempted carjacking that everyone's aware of, as you know, occurred at Lunds and Byerly's on December 9th at about 5 o'clock p.m. Also that day, we believe that the St. Louis Park Lunds and Byerly incident was also related. Similar suspects were rather prevalent to us at the time. And so as we worked through our investigation, we made some determinations. Our investigators did a great job. And so far today, we have 2 suspects arrested in that case, and we have a 3rd that we're looking for right now. I can't get any more details about that just because the case is still under investigation, but we're still working and we're very confident we'll be able to find a 3rd person. We also have a $5,000 reward if we have other information that comes forward, and so we'll use that for sure to help us solve the back end of this crime. Also from the county attorneys, you probably saw that they sent out a press release and have engaged in these conversations, and so they are also dedicating 2 special prosecutors on the adult side and also the juvenile side, and they're also providing more resources for victims of these types of crimes as well, so you can see depicted on the slide. Some new initiatives, and so when we first started to see the trend, like I talked about before, develop out for us, we started an auto theft prevention video series, and so we pushed that out to our residents here as an attempt to get the information out and have people help us out with prevention tips. We used a multimedia initiative that was launched at about that time. We, like I said, pushed out these videos, and we put a video together, a segment that's called Beyond the Badge, where we featured one of our detectives that works in this case to talk about the things that we're seeing and the preventative measures that we can take. We had 2-minute videos that talk about it, and then 4 public service announcements as well. Again, we used our social media posts and pushed information out. Our mayor provided a letter and sent that out to residents. We also had Edina newsletters that went out, and then we also provided reminder cards to our patrol officers to also, when they're out doing this proactive work in the neighborhoods, if they see garage door opens and things like that, to engage our residents and let them know to please close their garage door. We have very talented communication staff, and so they came up with this acronym as part of the video release segments, TIME, and so that just breaks down into take your keys with you, I for in your car, don't leave your valuable visible, make sure you lock all the windows and your doors, and E for even when you're home, close your garage doors. And this is really important because if you remember early on, we talked about people were leaving their garage doors open, easy opportunities for criminals just to walk in and steal a car. And that was, I would say, true for about 99% of our auto thefts. Really, really easy just to shut that down. And oftentimes what we were seeing is if suspects were driving through neighborhoods, the garage is down, they're just going to travel on through and not bother. So we're really trying to get that word out. We were working on this for a little while, but because of the recent upticks here and a great opportunity at our last community meeting, we decided to launch what we call our SafeCam program. And we decided to start it with our nearby neighborhood here just to see how it would go. And basically what it does is it provides an opportunity for residents to give us information as a pointer system. If they have surveillance cameras, Ring doorbell cameras, things like that, at their home, they can give us that information, and we have a pointer system in place, a database. And so it allows our investigators, if we have an event that happens in a neighborhood, to go back to this resource, see who else might have video surveillance, and then go get that information, which would be valuable for our case investigation as well. I won't go through the exact details here, but before you leave, this is a flyer that you can take with you. Information is also available online, and you can, if you're tech savvy, use your phone and then just download the link on your phone, or take this away with you, and then you can sign up that way. You know, I think the last week that we've had it going, we've had about over 90 people already sign up, so it's good. These are just the quick crime prevention tips that we've talked about that we want to continue to push out and let everyone know and pay attention to. And that was our take your vehicle's keys. Do not leave them in your vehicle or in a spare key holder. Please take them with you. Do not leave your car running while unattended. That's a big thing for people to do in the winter months. Close and lock all the windows and doors when you park. Park in well-lit areas when possible. Never leave valuables in your vehicle, especially if they can be seen from outside of the vehicle. Close garage doors even when you're home. People that leave valuables in their cars, it happens a lot of times still, computers, electronics, high-end value things, purses. That still remains a consistent issue, and that makes it an easy opportunity for people to walk by and just break open your car and take those items. And again, going back to the garage doors, it's as simple as keeping them closed. That's it. That concludes the formal presentation. So now I'll turn it over to Scott, and I think we're going to get into some Q&As.
If you're watching from home, you can call 1-800-374-0221 with conference ID 607-0997 and press star 1 on your telephone keypad when you are ready to ask a question. An operator will mute your line, place you into a queue until it is your time to speak. When it is your turn, Communication Director Jennifer Bennerat will introduce you. We will take online questions after we've exhausted all of the questions, I think, for folks that have come to the chambers today for this presentation. So we'll start with live questions first. Jennifer Bennerat, our Communications Director, will come around, and she's got a mobile microphone, and we're happy to take questions at this time.
Thank you. Galen Wolf, Edina. Just a question on tactics some of these criminals are using. I've heard about Post-it notes on the back window, so you take the Post-it note out and your car's running. I've heard about them tracking you outside of grocery stores and maybe following you home. Could you just review some of the tactics that you're seeing? Thank you.
The question was tactics and what people are doing, I'd say creatively, that we're seeing across the metro area. I haven't seen locally here Post-it notes and things like that, but what I've seen emerge is like this idea around seeing people at grocery stores, right, and then following people back home and maybe committing a crime that way. And so for that, what I would really reinforce to people is really to pay attention to your surroundings, right? And oftentimes we collectively, and I'm guilty of this, we're just trapped in our phones and we're not paying attention to what's going on around us. Especially winter months when it tends to get darker earlier in the day, it's super important and very important that you pay attention to what's going on around you, that you just distance yourself from the distractions, particularly now when we're seeing this uptick in auto theft and a few carjackings here locally. Pay attention to what's going on and be prepared and be ready. Now, if you see something suspicious that frightens you or you're concerned, it's not a problem at all. Call 911 and get officers going to the area. That's what we do. There's a lot of barriers in place that people think about in terms of I don't want to call 911 because I don't want to bother the officers, and that couldn't be any further from the truth. That's what we do. It's what we want to do. And we have plenty of resources behind the scenes to take care of the issue at hand. So we always remind people, call 911 if you see suspicious activity. But my biggest takeaway to answer your question would be just to really pay attention to your surroundings. Good question.
Bill, hey, Edina. Across the broader metro area, has there been any pattern of vehicle of choice for carjackers?
So for the carjacking cases, I couldn't speak to this maker model of a certain vehicle. When we think about auto thefts, typically what we've seen are more Toyotas, Hondas, Subaru, things like that. Jeff, would that be about right? Yeah. Some more of the foreign-made cars seem to be of higher value, or suspects are attracted to that. When we talk about carjackings, that doesn't seem to be tied to a maker model. It's just basically crime of opportunity is what I would say about that. But while I'm at it, the new trend, we talked about this a little bit before, some of us that are a little bit older, you might think back on when you're younger, steering columns that were broken, and in hardwiring, manipulating the wires into steering column was the old way of stealing cars. And what was different for me when I came into Edina, this pattern that we've seen emerge pretty quickly, the trend really is key fobs left in cars unlocked, whether in the garage or not. And so thinking about a matter of convenience, we have to really think hard about pulling those key fobs out, securing them, getting them away from the car, because it is such an easy opportunity for criminals to come in and see that and walk into a car, just press the start button, and they're off and running. And in some maker models, it's even possible that you can leave the fob behind and the car will still operate and keep driving around until you run out of gas or you turn it off. And so sometimes we'll see cars that are left running for that reason as well.
John Fink, Edina. So if I'm in that parking lot on 50th over here in France at the Lunds, and I'm a citizen, and this happens right in front of me, what am I supposed to do? My initial reaction is to get in there and help. What are your thoughts?
Sure. So if you see a violent crime happening in your presence, what do you do as a citizen? If you're able to, the first thing I'd recommend is to call 911 and get the police going as soon as you possibly can. That's like the number one best thing I think that you can do, right? Because there's always inherent delays with technology and getting officers going. It could be the matter, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, but every second counts. So that's the first thing I would do. I wouldn't get into confronting armed suspects, honestly. If there's an opportunity to break free and just get away and create distance, that's probably the best thing that you can do, right? And so sometimes those can be judgment calls. It's very stressful for people to see things like that, but we often recommend, don't get yourself directly involved in it if you can at all help it, but rarely call 911 and get the experts, and we're trained up to handle that kind of stuff. We have the equipment, we have the technology, we have the ability to do it. That's first and foremost the best thing that you can do.
Yelling and shouting?
Sure, that's a great point. And making a presence and yelling and screaming, honking horns, things like that that you can do to make noise and distractions, absolutely that does help. So when people are quiet and if not much noise is made, to your point, it does offer that opportunity for people just to kind of sneak in and commit crimes, but that's absolutely a great point too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jill Halbrooks, also Edina. 2 questions. I never read, and maybe it's not being released, but were there weapons involved in the carjacking incident at Lunds?
I'm cautious to answer that because I don't want to get into the dynamics of the criminal case. But what I could tell you on the front end is that there's no information that there were weapons involved by the suspects in the case.
My second question is, we were out for dinner, and this was August, I think, but my son-in-law drives a Prius, and his catalytic converter was stolen very quickly. Have you seen that type of pattern?
Yeah, so catalytic converter thefts are way up as well, embedded in the stats that I loosely reference. We are seeing massive upticks in that type of theft across the metro area as well. It used to be, maybe it's still true, that with the market demands of metals and things like that would drive the increases on those kinds of thefts. That's probably still the case right now with the current economy, but oftentimes that will drive the increases and decreases. And we're also working on a campaign to put out to our residents here to talk about some preventative measures and things that people can do. They really are random, though. They happen oftentimes in business communities, parking lots, areas where poorly lit parking lots, or a business that might be shut down at night, and we oftentimes see people jumping in and trying to take cargo van, catalytic converters or trucks and things like that. But also it does happen in residential properties as well. But yeah, it's been on the rise too.
You said the authorized strength was 57. Is that authorized by statute or by budget? And have you been asking to increase that?
Good question. So The question is our current authorized strength, is that a state statute, city-driven number? How do we arrive at 57 is the question here, generally speaking. We have in our budget an increase already for 2023. Right now, we're down officers, as are many departments. Recruitment is very difficult. It is not easy to bring in officers in the current climate that we're dealing with. So even if we were to execute and start a process now, it would be about 6 months for us to hire someone, bring them in, train them, and get them ready to be out on what we call solo patrol on their own. So it's going to take time. We are already in process of backfilling those vacancies I talked about, and we have a capacity in terms of how many officers we can bring on at any given time, like an academy, if you will. So I'm comfortable with where we're at right now because it's going to take us everything we've got just to get in and get our current vacancies filled. And then we've had ongoing discussions with the council about does it make sense to increase it at some point in time heading into 2023. I will say that this council has been extremely supportive and has already told me that if there are things that I need to ask for, they will execute on that and they will provide for that as well. So those conversations have been in process.
Carl Schneider, Edina. Are we seeing any problems, an uptake like in crime or uptick in crime as far as the policies due to the Minneapolis City Council and their policing? I know they've been cutting their force or...
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to make a correlation between specific policies that have been made in Minneapolis, per se. I guess what I would say is when I talk about like the lower numbers of officers across the metro, really, I think that does have somewhat of an impact here. And if Minneapolis is down 200 officers and there's not this opportunity to do maybe proactive or have the presence on the street, I think that does have an impact, right, of having just presence, whether it's community engagement, whether it's enforcement, what's an interaction, those kinds of things. So I think that can carry over from community to community, but it's not unique here. It's kind of an experience in many areas around the metro area.
Norm Sickman, Highland in Edina. And the question I have is, has there been research done across the Twin Cities to look at root causes of things like carjacking and smash and grab? Percentage done by minors versus adults? And is there money behind this that's driving any increase in crimes, such as chop shops or where money might come from?
Sure, great question. I would say that I wouldn't say there's contemporary research right now that's come out because it's all relatively new. I can say these are conversations that we're having right now with our lawmakers, our policy makers, various officials that represent different layers of government as well to talk about that very issue. And as I indicated early on, it's multifaceted too. When we just think about COVID, for example, that's had an impact. I'll just use kids as an example. There's a lot of lost kids out there right now because they haven't had the adequate resources connected in as a byproduct of the COVID experience. That feeds into it, right? And we talk about lower officer counts on the street, that possibly, so there's multiple different things that I think are contributing to this, and I don't think it's very clear yet, but that is underway as we speak. From a funding standpoint, I'm not aware of explicit dollars that are associated with it. We're just really kind of ramping up those conversations, and we're going to see where it takes us, but I would imagine down the road there'll be more funding for that coming our way. Great question.
Oh, yeah. Are you seeing an increase or a decrease in the number of police officer applicants in Edina last year?
I would say, generally speaking, decrease across the board, for sure. Here in Edina, it's remained relatively the same. Now, remember, I'm new, so I don't know exactly how many put in last time. This is a very, very good department, an excellent city. I don't have any issues or concerns about attracting talent here to the city of Edina.
There have been fewer.
Well, it's the factors of the job stress and the things that are going on. So it's very difficult to pull people into this market right now because they're concerned about everything that we've been seeing over the last couple of years. It's a tough job. It's a stressful job, and you talk a lot about like officer wellness, for example, right? And how can we provide and prepare officers to be the best officers that they can be? But there's a reason for that. It's because the job is very stressful, right? And it's changed. I've been in this job for about 30 years now, and it's far different than it was when I first started as a kid to where we are right now. And I think that turns people off, right? But I think we're starting to, turn the page a little bit here now, and I think over the next couple of years, I think we'll start to see better improving numbers coming out. We're just kind of going through this low point right now, unfortunately.
Hi, my name is Anna Reisinger. I just had a question. Are there reports of vulnerable populations being assaulted, particularly the elderly? And do you work closely with assisted living places for those reports?
And I'm sorry I missed the front end of that question, but different population segments are being impacted by crimes? Assaults. Sure, and comment on that and what we're seeing from a trend standpoint. Yeah, in Edina, I haven't seen much on that trend line to show and support that those populations are being impacted that way. Again, assaults for us have remained about the same. We're not seeing huge upticks in that area. It's more about the property crimes that we're seeing, quite honestly, that contribute into some of the serious events, carjacking being one of them.
What can we do to prevent catalytic converter thefts, and what should we do if a catalytic converter is stolen from a car?
Sure. What can we do to prevent, right? So one of the things that we're looking at, this comes from the state, is to provide, put serial numbers on catalytic converters, right? And so we're entertaining that initiative. We're taking a look at the logistics to see if it's even feasible for us to do that or not. But one of the initiatives that's going to be launched potentially is to do just that, right? So when you put a serial number or a brand or some kind of label on a catalytic converter, it turns a thief off to that because they know that that can be traced. And oftentimes what we see with these converter thefts, these items, they go into the black market, and that's where the value is too. And so the more that you can do to kind of stop to interrupt that pattern, that's better for all of us. If you see it happening, again, really that's going back to the 911. Even if you see suspicious activity, it'd be pretty clear because someone will have tools. Then you need some pretty heavy-duty tools to cut. You also need the opportunity and location, so a poorly lit area or a business parking lot is a good example. If you see somebody kind of working around at the wrong time of day when it's a close, you call 911 and get us there. And we've had success arresting people that way too. And it goes back to what we talked about on the front end. It's this really united front on crime prevention. We can't do it all the time. We're going to be out there as much as we can, but we also need to leverage our community members and making sure that we're all doing the same thing at the same time to help prevent this stuff from moving forward. So it's really that relationship that we have collaboratively as well.
Hi, my name is Peggy. I live in the Edina area over on 72nd in York, and I just want to say thank you. This is an excellent police department, and I'm just so grateful that we have you guys. And just to go along with what you said about Better Together, I know it's not called Neighborhood Watch anymore, but we had a neighborhood engagement, a community engagement officer. Finding out, he was wonderful. He really said so many of the things that you've said this afternoon, but it's like we have our own officer, and so many times that we call, and I don't know if everybody knows that you can be a host and have a neighborhood community engagement, and it really does help, and we all do have to be responsible for that.
Yeah, great comments, and thank you for that. That was one point I didn't hit on, is that we do have neighborhood engagement officers. We have 4, and they're broken up into what we call different zones around the city, and they're intended for that work, right? So they provide patrol service right now, but when we have incidents maybe at a lower level in a neighborhood, let's just say we have a couple theft remodels, and people get concerned, what's going on? We need information. This might not be good enough because we need that direct contact. What we're planning to continue to do in the next summer is develop out those points of contact for you. So at a lower level, if you wanted to have a meeting or host a meeting, we could bring in that engagement officer to have that very direct conversation about what trends are we seeing. Also offer up crime prevention tips and kind of have those good conversations, but also it creates a great opportunity for neighbors to get to know each other. And that's really one of the big byproducts of that, is that people are engaged in the conversation, they understand what's going on, they're paying attention to their surroundings, and then they're just engaged with their government as well too. So thank you for bringing it up. It's a very important work that we've been doing, and then we're looking to expand that and then mark it out exactly, because the question comes up, okay, who is my neighborhood engagement officer? So we're working on some material to help present that out so people have a clear understanding who their point of contact is.
We also, in addition to having the neighborhood engagement officers that are within our police department, we also have a city staff member who engages and works in establishing neighborhoods just in general, right? We've kind of divided the city up into a number of neighborhoods. Some of them have neighborhood associations that are active and some are not. And so if you have one that, if you live in a place that there is not an active neighborhood association, MJ Lehman is her name. She can help you put that together.
talk a little bit more? I'm sorry, I'm Lynn Hedgenova, also from Edina. Can you talk a little bit more about the carjackings, how that occurs? I don't actually know how somebody carjacks you. Is it typically when you're getting in and out of your car at a store where you have packages or that? And then what can you do to try to prevent it?
Yeah, great question. So, like, what are the circumstances that might unfold that lead to that? It really has been, it varies. We've seen it here now, if you go back to St. Louis Park in Edina, at the Lunds Byerly's parking lot, right? Never really seen that here before, ever. This is a new pattern that evolved. I've seen them occur elsewhere in just residential neighborhoods on city blocks or other business parking lots. So it really kind of varies the location. I think it really gets more into about the crime of opportunity, honestly. It's just more about people that are just driving around looking for people that might be in their phones, that might just be distracted, that might not be paying attention, poorly lit, not well lit areas. Things like that, that'll kind of be an opportunity to spur that kind of on. So more about crime of opportunity is generally what we see. More than anything else. What do you do? Right? And it goes back to just calling 911. Again, it goes back if you see somebody that's suspicious or activity nearby, it's okay to call 911. We're trained to handle stuff, right? So we know if it's a real deal, if it's not, if it just requires a quick conversation to stop and just somebody's confused, whatever the case might be, that's what we do, and we're used to it. So my biggest recommendation, again, is to call 911. But it goes back to the point that was made over here, too. If it looks like it's going to happen, being loud, obnoxious, turning your lights on, honking the horn, those are very good strategies as well to think about, too, particularly if you're in a public area.
Good afternoon. My name is Nora Davis, and I'm in the Lake Cornelia neighborhood, close to Southdale. And I'm worried about what's been going on at Southdale. I'm a great reader of your crime reports in the Sun Current, and crime seems to be escalating in that area. So what can we do?
Yeah, similar crime prevention strategies that we talked about, I think they do carry over to the business community as well. Everyone should also know that our representatives of our business community recently reached out to us expressing similar concerns. And so we had a meeting last week with representatives, leadership groups from 50th and France, Galleria, and Southdale to talk through those kinds of things. And so 3 weeks ago, we saw looting behavior and mass people coming in kind of overtaking a store, and that was a concern at that moment. So we put the meeting together virtual. We had a great conversation. We talked about a number of different crime prevention strategies. We've also engaged with the security companies and the leadership groups within those security companies to talk about how can we work collaboratively and be responsive to the trends that we're seeing. So that was a great conversation to talk through that, build some more relationships. It was great for me to introduce myself into that business community and get to know people that way too. But we have a plan on moving forward that every week we're engaged in dialogue about anything that might be happening that they're seeing that we need to be aware of, and then we can deploy resources as needed as well. If we have a large-scale event, something that's really of great concern, I'm very confident I can get 30, 40 officers here in a short period of time to take care of things if it gets that bad.
Do we want to check the phones?
Our first caller on the line today is Ruth Ann Metzger. Operator, will you please unmute Ruth Ann's line? And Ruth Ann, please begin by stating your name for the record.
Ruth Ann Metzger.
You can go ahead, Ruth Ann.
I'm wondering what I should have done. I was at Southdale in the middle of the afternoon at Eddie Bauer and saw a guy at the front of the store as I was leaving with two big shopping bags, which looked like Disney bags that were not part of Southdale. And he had them packed full. He kept his eye on me. I looked out the corner of my eye as I left the store, but I have not been back to Southdale since then. What should I have done?
Yeah, good question. So if you see, again, suspicious activity, two things I would do. Typically, they'll have security nearby, engage security. I believe they have phones probably nearby that you can call and get on that phone and have a conversation to alert suspicious activity. And then the second piece, again, goes back to calling 911. If you think you're seeing a crime happen, the earlier you can call 911, the better off we all will be, because it gets us going and responding to the scene sooner. And depending on how things unfold, again, we're trained to handle whatever the case might be, so we'll be able to kind of figure out what the situation was and engage the right people and get it solved for you. But that would be my biggest two pieces of recommendation or advice to you on the front end.
I do have a number of other people on the line, but no one is entering the queue to speak. As a reminder, if you'd like to speak or ask the chief a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. That's the asterisk symbol, then the number 1. If you press pound, that actually will take you out of the queue. So again, star 1, that will get you in the queue to speak. With that, I do have another speaker. Operator, will you please unmute the line of Ms. Angie Arnold? Angie, you can go ahead.
Hello. First, I want to thank you for your service. It's really important to us in our community, and I feel very assured that you're in our community, taking care of us. I live in a condo complex that's behind Fairview Southdale Hospital, and we've been trying to encourage our association to provide security. We currently have 2 multi-unit garages that are unlocked. We have 13 buildings that have 8 residences in each building that are the common hallway is unlocked. I'm very concerned with all of the apartment buildings that are going up in this area. The increase in population often means that the crime increases. And I'd like to know from a police standpoint, what do you think about the fact that these buildings and garages are completely unsecured?
Well, a couple of things that I heard in there. So unsecured garages goes back to the point that I talked about, is making sure that you work with your management company, ownership of the property, and work towards securing the garages first and foremost. I think I heard security brought up in that question as well. And I always say it's never a problem to hire security. That's fine, and it happens all the time. The community it came from worked with lots of security companies to kind of work through emerging trends and patterns, and so it could be a short-term strategy that would work out just fine. The big important part for us behind the scenes is if somebody elects to hire security, we work very well behind the scenes with a security company that may or may not come in. So if somebody comes in, we are likely already have pre-existing relationships, and then we would work towards figuring out what can we do to help each other out behind the scenes to make sure a neighborhood's safe and secure, property safe, secure, those kinds of things as well. And also, if there are, say for example, problems with ownership, managers of properties, chances are we could help out with that conversation as well, right? Because we all have shared concerns around livability kinds of things too. So we have staff that can also help out in those conversations if needed as well.
Well, our buildings are completely unlocked.
Yes, I would talk to the ownership and management about that. There's one thing that we can't do, and when it gets onto private property, our thresholds, we have limits, right? And so we can't go on property and force and mandate. We can work closely and try and provide like the best crime prevention solutions, but ultimately the ownership or management group is going to have to take a lead role in that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, if you're on the line and you would like to speak or ask the chief a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. That's the asterisk symbol, then the number 1, and that will get you in the queue to speak.
A couple filler comments. Do we need that? Yeah,
sure.
Good. I'll just go back to talking about really this important piece about this kind of helping each other out, because oftentimes you see this quite often where it's like, well, the police can do this and the police need to do that, and that's true. But we have to continuously think about how can we work together on these issues, and that's like a big push for us, is to talk about crime prevention strategies, reduction strategies, engagement strategies, because we're stronger together when we can unite and then work through these issues collaboratively. There's not enough police out there across the nation that you can put on a block and try and solve a problem, but I've had great success over the years of my career. I've been confronted with many, many challenges where I've worked successfully with residents, community members, and we've solved huge problems, right? And so I don't see that stopping anytime moving forward. It's different, unique problems that we're confronted with now. So we will get through them. We just have to make sure that we're all on the same page in how we move forward on that.
Our next question comes from Terry Gruzebek. Operator, will you please unmute Terry's line? And Terry, please begin by stating your name for the record.
Hello. I would like to address the Good Samaritan intervener. One has to consider what your capacity is. How are you going to be perceived by the perpetrators? Okay, can you distract them or disrupt their ongoing crime to give the victim an opportunity to get away. Extraction for both of you should be your paramount consideration. Sometimes victims are their own worst enemies and they want to fight these people. I've seen videos where women will hang onto their purse, they'll be thrown to the ground, they'll be dragged across the parking lot. Those can be lost causes. So you always have to consider, how do I get myself out of this, depending on how many perpetrators there are. The other thing is evidence. Can you get them on video? If you have to physically contact them or tussle with them, can you throw an item of their clothing over some of their cars that might later be associated to them as evidence? So these are all considerations that you have to rehearse and do scenario training for before you just willy-nilly jump into these things. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. You bring up some great points. Probably the biggest in all that is how the human body reacts to stress under pressure. And so when you think about being a good Samaritan, it's one thing to say you can do it and it's easy. It's quite another to be able to execute that under pressure, and how the mind and the body react to stress, honestly. And when you come across a shocking situation, if you've not practiced and rehearsed on how you might execute on that, to provide aid, to help, whatever, it's tough. It's really tough. And so if you're in that mindset and you think you can help, you need to train on it, you need to think about it. That's why we always say call 911, because that's what we do and that's what we practice, is to operate under stress. And that's a key thing to consider as you work through these types of scenarios too. So it's a great point. Thank you.
Back to a person in the room right now.
Hi, thank you. Julie Wickland. I live in Southwest Minneapolis, so your neighbor here. Appreciate you having this forum. Just wanted to piggyback on one of the comments, questions that was asked about commonalities among the cars, but commonalities among the perpetrators, I think, is another question that I have for you to address. And then if you are seeing, minors versus, adults and repeat offenders, and if so, are there things that, additionally to us, watching out for each other, doing all we can to be safe, to do your, time, to be locked up, what else can we be doing to help in terms of whether it's, obviously supporting you, but if there are other issues that you're seeing that are around, district attorney policies or county policies, that could also be suggestions where we could give some help or support.
Yeah, great question. First off, yeah, we've seen some repeat behavior trends, unfortunately, in, I would say, young adults, so probably teens into early adulthood, and that's where we're seeing the recidivism conversation pop up. And so we've had good conversations with our elected officials here at different levels to talk through that a little bit, to talk about contemporary current issues that we're seeing in a timely manner and how to react to that. Those are very much conversations. To answer your question, what can you do? I think, and we had this very good conversation at our last community meeting, which is hold your elected officials and hold the people that represent you accountable. Pay attention to the details to see what's going on. Follow the cases through the system, and if you're not happy with the results, hold us accountable. That's really the solution to those kinds of issues that might pop up. People have been really reactive to it. The conversations have been good as of late, and so we're thinking that we're heading in the right direction, but we need to continue that and figure out what is the right solution here to help stop the recent upticks that we're seeing that are so unfortunate and so impactful to our communities here and nearby. Thank you.
Any final questions from the room today? Yes.
So after being here today, number one, thank you for doing this. I'm thinking about, I live on a lane, so there's about 10 residents, and I'm thinking about getting the other residents together and having a group. And if we did, would one of the officers from here come and speak to us? Because I'm thinking if we established, say, a connection just within there, when we're gone, when we're leaving town, you know, if I knew that about my neighbor, well, then I'd pay a little more attention. Would somebody be willing to come and speak with us if we put that together?
Yep, absolutely. We can combine an officer and the work that our city hall staff, MJ, does too, and put that together. And then, yeah, that's not a problem at all. Very easy. I think I saw one back there.
Also, again, thank you for putting this on. Also, what can we as citizens legally and like morally do if we see if someone's attacking us or like trying to carjack us? What are we like legally able to do to defend ourselves and our property? Because like I don't carry, so what are we legally able to do to defend ourselves and our property without getting into trouble legally?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. It's a complex question to answer, but you have the right to defend yourself, right, at the end of the day. So the immediacy and the confrontation of a threat and how you react to that is justified under law. Now, there's exceptions to that. It gets more complicated. It depends on the circumstances, and that's why I go back to each case is a little bit different and unique, but the basis of it all is that you have the right to defend yourself against attacks. Good questions.
Chief, at the council, we've had several emails from folks about a homeless man living out near Target. This is a little bit off topic. We've had several emails at the council level about a person who's living, I think, basically right around the Target store. And folks wonder why we don't do something about that. Would you comment on that, please? I think it would be helpful to people.
Yeah, sure. So there's a difference between public and private property when we talk about these things, and everyone has their right to be homeless, right? And if they want to stay in a certain public setting, for the most part, they can. Now, exceptions are if you're on private property, the owner of that property has the right to then trespass or have someone removed from the property if needed. We've also received calls on the police side, and so we responded and had conversations with probably the same person that you're referencing, and then we try to offer resources, because that's really what's most important, is that we can move people under certain conditions, but we also need to get people educated and provide resources to help that person out with whatever the underlying conditions might be to have success for that person moving forward. So we have been out there several times to have that conversation. If it becomes a more prevalent issue on a private property, we'll engage the owner of the property and then figure out what the right solution is. But there's a lot of issues like that that are around the metro area, and it's also honestly directed and controlled by federal statute, case law, things like that too as well, that drive a lot of those conversations and parameters around what we can and can't do.
I have one more caller on the phone. Operator, will you please unmute the line of Mr. David Frankel? And David, please begin by stating your full name for the record. David, are you there?
Frankel?
There.
Yes, David Frankel. Ready to go? You talked about community engagement officers, but I'm wondering, I've brought this up numerous times over the years, about having community policing that's done in a number of communities in the Twin Cities and nationwide. The chief's former city has a pretty extensive web page on community policing, and I'm wondering why we can't do this in Edina. Get the police department more engaged with the community. As an example, which is very small, I realized that I saw a presentation by a police officer on the West Coast, and he said one of the best ways he connects to the community to roll down his window and says hi to people. We need a lot of little things like that, but more organized programs like I've seen, Brooklyn Park put together, and I wonder what your comments are about that.
Yeah, thanks for your comments. And so the background on that is David and I have exchanged some emails on this topic, and if you're not familiar with Brooklyn Park, where I came from, he's referencing our website up there, which has a lot of different kind of activities that police officers are involved with. That's not too far off from what we're doing right now. We're just maybe not educating or just marketing that out in the way in which you've seen it up in Brooklyn Park. But that's not to say that we're not looking at expanding that, because I can provide with you a list or a slide that has about 30 different initiatives that our current staff are involved with, all really good proactive stuff. But we have to think about the changing times here and how to kind of redevelop that stuff out, pivot, and then do different things to engage our community in different ways. And it's really all about building trust. That's what our aim is, and that's what we're going to be looking to do more of that work into next summer. As we talk about hiring efforts, we're building our rinks back up to where they need to be, and then that's the exact work ahead, is to figure out how can we think about different ways to engage our community in a different way, in a non-traditional way. And it is very much what you just talked about, is just reducing stress, reducing barriers, building trust, having conversations in a different way, away from the 911 response, because that's what can be so impactful for people. We don't want people to just see us in a 911 response setting. That's stressful, that's impactful, and we want to think about ways to engage your community really in non-traditional ways that way too. So, long story short, look forward to it. We're going to be doing more of that work, and we're going to expand that out. And I'm fortunate where I was helpful, impactful in developing out many of those initiatives in Brooklyn Park. And fortunately for you, I get to carry all that stuff over and take from where I used to come and put it into the new place here too. So it's coming.
Yeah, I think the bottom line, I'd like to see more officers out of their cars, which is a simplistic comment, but we need them, in the parks, we need them in public facilities, we need them in commercial areas. So people can see on a day-to-day basis that we have officers engaged in the community, not just driving by.
Yep, absolutely. And so I would wrap it up to say, by example here, 50th in France, that's one of the changes that we made here in a short period of time, was to have more foot patrol. So it's one thing to drive around squad cars. It's a great presence. It's a great tactic, and put equipment out there. But to have officers actually walking out, interacting with community members or business workers, that's exactly what we tried to do over the last couple weeks, and then that will continue. We're behind the scenes strategizing on how to kind of redeploy and redevelop out kind of our new way of doing business here over the next couple of years too. So thank you for that. And
Okay, thanks.
Representative Edelson here, she has a few comments.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Is it working? Okay. I just want to let you know that we, from a state level, Senator Franzen and I have been working closely with the chief, and as well as Hennepin County, to figure out what we can do to, sir, you had said this kind of, where is it coming from, looking at that broader scope of how we really can stop it statewide. We do have a few initiatives. One I'm working on is a statewide approach to auto theft. New Mexico actually has this approach, where, say, if we have Minneapolis is down 200-300. It's a lot of officers, and so if they've had an uptick in auto theft, then trying to figure out if they don't have enough officers, that we could have a state level that would do that. So right now, in under our Department of Commerce, we have the Fraud Bureau that we could expand to use as an auto theft prevention area. So that way, we do have officers that are investigating it to try to get to the part of who are missing. But also, when I talk to the courts, what we're finding out is a lot of these young, a lot of them are young, 12 to 17 years old, as the police chief said. And so I've also talked to our superintendents, trying to figure out, from the courts, we know that they're missing school. Is there a way to stop them there and kind of intervene early before they've actually committed a crime? So we will be following up, and we'll have more information, but I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you for being here. I'm your state senator for Edina, Bloomington, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka. But I really do want to say I'm here to listen, and we can't solve crime with one regulation, one law, one person, one police department. This is really going to take all of us, and I'm here to listen, to bring back ideas, and you have my commitment and my support. I certainly have a high level of respect for police and our first responders. My dad was a police back in my hometown growing up, and I do think that this is going to take a lot of us to really get to the root cause of what's happening. And one thing I know I've been involved in I've represented this community for 9 years, I was telling the chief, and I've never seen so much pain and so much anxiety and so much anger. And that is sad to say, but we will be on the mend. We will do everything we can to work with all of you and our elected officials and our community to really find what we can do to move forward in a positive way. And you can count on my supports, Representative Edelson, Representative Elkins, who also represents part of Edina. So more to come, but certainly know that you are being listened to, and we are seeing you, and we will take action with you together. So thank you so much for all the work, and I plan to be here at 7 o'clock to hear more questions as well, and so does the representative. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming today to our town talk, and I want to thank the chief for all the work that he's put in. It's clear that this is a serious issue, and we've got a serious approach to it. We have media that are here. We have 4 members of our city council. Carolyn Jackson, a member of our council, was here. I missed her at the beginning. We have our state representative and our state senator here. So this is something that's serious for us, and we're going to treat it like that. So thank you for coming today. We appreciate it. Good night.